Hello, so we were talking about development. This is the third development video, and we had been talking about motor development and how kids differ in terms of how quickly they reach these milestones, but the order of the sequence is usually about the same. So let's look at this. So this shows you how at 3 months, most babies can reach for an object, although they may not be able to grasp it. At 6 months, they can grasp an object pretty easily, and they can also sit up. Around 10 months, they should be crawling. They may take different forms of crawling, but they should be doing some form of crawling. At 12 months, they'll grab onto furniture and other things to kind of help them pull themselves up to a standing position. And then by 15 months, they should be able to walk unaided, walk by themselves. Now, if you have a child and they don't reach these right exactly where it says there, it's probably nothing to worry about. Especially if the order is, looks normal. And as I told you, my son didn't even start walking until 15 months. But it's nice to kind of have a guideline to know when these generally happen. All right. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and talk about cognitive development. So there is a man in France named Jean Piaget, and he became really interested in observing children and looking at how they tried to make sense of the world. Now, prior to Piaget, most people thought of kids as kind of miniature adults, but he really did a lot of work to try to show people that kids are different, and that just like we have to develop physically, we also have to develop mentally. He thought that children were really trying to understand their world, and that they were forming mental representations or schemas of the world and how it worked. So, after a lot of study, he came up with 4 cognitive stages that he thought all children went through. So the first one is the sensory motor stage, and this goes from about birth to 2 years of age. And here is where they will learn about the world through using their mouth and their hands. So they'll reach out, pick something up, put it in their mouth. You guys have babysat before and know what this is like, right? You constantly have to watch them, make sure they don't swallow anything they shouldn't. During this stage, they should learn a concept called object permanence. And this is just basically that even if they can't see an object, it still exists. So what I might do is I might put a toy in front of my baby, and then I might cover up the toy with a blanket. If they quit looking for the toy, act as if it's not there anymore, that means they have not attained object permanence. But if they're actively looking for the toy, they pull off the blanket so they can grab the toy, then they have at least a rudimentary understanding of this. Another thing that relates to this is separation anxiety. So if you've done some babysitting, you know that with pretty young babies, the parent can hand you the child and leave, and the baby won't even cry. They just kind of transfer their attention to you and seem fine. But at some point, this changes dramatically. And now when the parent gives you the child cries and they try to reach their parent, and it can be a real ordeal trying to get the parent out the door so that you can try to calm the child down. This usually happens around 8 to 12 months of age, and it's called separation anxiety. Okay. So those are kind of the main things that happen in the sensory motor stage. Now we're going to go on to the pre-operational stage. This goes from about 2 years of age to 6 years of age. So here children reason in an intuitive, pre-logical manner. So that means they're starting to think about things and how they work, but they're not always really logical in how they think about these things. They tend to be egocentric. So in other words, they kind of feel like they're the center of the universe and they see kind of everything through their own eyes and how does it affect them. They don't really do a great job at empathy yet, or thinking through how other people might feel. So an example of this is hide and seek. Have you ever played hide and seek with a pretty young child? And if they cover up their eyes, then they think you can't see them just because they can't see you. So that would be an illustration of this egocentrism. Another interesting thing about the pre-operational stage is that the child is easily misled by appearances and they lack the property of conservation. So for instance, let's say I had 2 measuring cups of liquid and they each had 1 cup of liquid, okay? Now I get 2 glasses. One is short and fat, the other one is tall and thin. I pour 1 cup of liquid in each, and then I say to the child, which has more liquid? Which has more orange juice or whatever the liquid is? The child will point to the tall, thin one because it looks like it has more. So they're just not reasoning logically yet. That'll change, but it's kind of fun to try that and see if they understand this property. Another thing you can do is you can take like 20 pennies and you can bunch them really close together, and then you can take another 20 pennies and lay them all out, kind of spread out. And if you say which grouping has more pennies, they'll pick the more spread out one. All right, the third stage is the concrete operational stage, and this goes from about the age of 7 to the age of 12. Here, children are becoming more flexible in their thinking, and they're starting to be able to use logic. But this has to be something that's pretty straightforward, something that they can see, something that they can test out, okay? So their logic tends to be very concrete, not necessarily abstract. So they would understand the conservation property here, but they might need to, you just show them, okay, here's a cup and here's a cup. We're pouring the same amount of liquid in. They might need to kind of see things in a concrete, straightforward way. And then finally, we get to the formal operational stage, and this is from about the age of 12 to adulthood. And in this stage, they start to be able to think abstractly. So they can think about things that they can't see. They can even use logic and reason to think about things they can't see. So you could say, hypothetically, how might you do this? And they would be able to figure it out. They can think in terms of the future or the past. They don't always have to be in the present. They should be able to determine cause and effect. They should be able to do little experiments to kind of figure things out. They start to understand concepts and general rules. So this is a very, very brief outline of Piaget's theory. He studied a lot of different things, and I'm really oversimplifying this. So I encourage you to read that section in your textbook to give you a little more information. But one big question is, was Piaget right? Did he get this stuff right? Overall, he did pretty good. Now, he tended to underestimate some of children's cognitive abilities. Those stages tend to be a little too long. They should maybe end a little earlier. So he underestimated how much children could actually do. But remember, before he came on the scene, nobody really paid attention to any of this stuff. He tended to underestimate how quickly cognitive development happened, but he got the sequence right. So one question is, does development progress through distinct stages, or is it more gradual? And what we found out is that maybe a children will master a concept like conservation of matter in some tasks, but not in others. Maybe they would fail the liquid test, but they do okay on the penny test, or vice versa. All right, I think we'll stop there for our third video, and then on the next video, we'll finish everything up.